stars again. A brand new day to amend the thoughts in my mind. A few words to you I send, and hope this spells out the end.
Well, good evening, Sauna Hounds, and welcome to the Week 4 Sauna Trail Book Club. Let me just check my audio real quick. This is the final week of our book club, and we've been going through, you can see the picture on the screen there, Bernhard Hillila's The Sauna Is, which was first published in 1979. And I chose to go through this book for our book club because it's a very important book. It was published after a few decades of extreme sauna popularity in the late 70s, and is written by a Finnish American who did a very good job at kind of correcting the record of perhaps some misconceptions or things that Americans hadn't quite grasped yet about the Finnish sauna practice. So it's been a great book for going through that and showing some of that stuff. It's a small book. Here's the original printing. The blue one is from the 80s, and it's a very short book, but well written. A lot of work went into putting together this book. So I'll quick summarize where we've been in the book, and then we'll get into tonight's topic. And if anyone wants to join, the link is, let me put it on screen here. The link is in the chat. And so you can just open that up on your phone or in your browser on your desktop. And it's pretty easy to join. And it's just like a little video. It'll ask for your permission for your audio and video, and then it'll show you on the screen like this. I think Pablo joined us last week. So we'll see if anyone else shows up tonight. But the topic for tonight is one of the most discussed aspects of sauna, which is sauna construction. So there's a few pretty active forums online, and they're mostly discussing sauna construction. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe why Bernhard puts that last in his book. But first, let's review what the previous weeks were like. And I've kind of edited and bundled together the first 2 weeks, weeks 1 and 2. So you can go back and watch those. And I put some photos in and edited out all my uhs and ums. And then I'll edit weeks 3 and 4 together as one video. So I'll try and keep this one a little bit succinct so that it's not too long. But last week's was really good. It was good to Paul joined us, Pablo, and Julie. Let me see. Okay. So here on the screen is where we've been so far. Let me take myself off so you can see the whole thing. The first 3 chapters. So the first chapter, A Part of My Heritage, he covered the purpose of the book and the background of making the book, what went into it. And then A Bath That's Different kind of goes into a high-level discussion of what is a Finnish sauna. And then A Bathhouse with a History kind of sets that in the scope of history. What are different expressions of public bathing and private bathing? And then what's the historical root of sauna? And then the next week, week 2, we covered A Gift from the Finns. This dives in kind of the uniqueness of the Finnish sauna in comparison to other baths, and how marketing kind of strips it of a lot of that uniqueness and kind of ruins it in many ways. And then A Bath That's Enjoyable. explaining that sauna is more than just heat therapy. And this chapter is interesting because Bernhard goes into detail on how to sauna. So one of these days I might just put that out as a separate video because it's interesting to see the steps that he lays out. And then a means of rejuvenation is a chapter about physiological and health aspects of sauna. And then last week we covered a spot for relaxation, which talked about the slowing down, physical and mental relaxation, and then also connecting with others. How it could be a good place for politics or working things out. That was a really good chapter. And then a setting for propriety talks about sex and sauna, and that the combination of the two kind of prostitutes the Finnish sauna practice. And he had a lot of strong words and strong opinions in that chapter. And an aid to grooming was about hair care. And Julie talked a little bit about that last week. And that was a good chapter if you have a lot of hair, which I don't. And then this week, like I said, we'll be discussing construction. So a room for heating we'll discuss different ways that you could heat a sauna and what it might cost to heat the sauna. Of course, this is back in 1970s and 80s costs. And then a project for do-it-yourselfers. And this, he distinguishes between a sauna and a steam room and talks about some of the basic functional consideration. And he goes into a decent amount of detail. And this is the primary construction chapter of the book. And the final chapter, a variety of designs, he shares some different floor plan options or prefab kit options. All right. So let me see. I got to figure out how to remove that one picture from the screen. Nope, that's not it. Sorry. There we go. So let's get into the construction aspects of this. And if anyone would like to join, like I said, the link is in the chat. You're welcome to join. I'll just leave that down here for a bit. And then at the end, I will share some other sauna construction book recommendations. But the last three chapters here is a room for heating. And he starts by discussing the different types of heating that you can do in the sauna. And that's basically steam. He mentions gas, electric, and wood burning. Gas, electric, and wood burning. And then he talks about the different benefits, potential benefits for each one, and the cost for running. So if you have a forest where trees are falling, then obviously wood burning is going to be pretty cheap. That's pretty much a free type of fuel for a sauna. Now, it does maybe require the exercise to break down the wood, but that can be also seen as a positive, especially if you need to lose a few pounds. And then gas and electric were pretty cheap. This is written in the late 70s, so he references like some energy crisis issues and that natural gas could be a good source of heating. And then there was one type that he didn't mention, which was, let me see if I have an image here for you. There were a few of these that got built in the US where they used a radiator type system with rocks and to heat them up. And I've actually used a sauna in Ely, Minnesota that's heated that way, and one in Duluth, Minnesota that was heated that way, where they had probably a centralized heating system like that. And then in where Smart Fins decided, hey, we can just heat up the room this way and then put rocks around it, and there we go, we've got a sauna. And I think there was even a few like this in Massachusetts. So, and he does some estimates about how, you can see on this page, there's some estimates about how much it would cost back in the late 70s. And it was pretty affordable back then. Still is fairly affordable these days. And he gets into the comparing a sauna to like a range or a clothes dryer, microwave oven. And then kind of gives some recommendations about what size of a heater you might want, depending on how large your hot room is. And I have a few differences with him on these construction chapters, but one difference might be that I would recommend oversizing the heater just a little bit. It's always nice to have a little extra headroom to your heating power. And then the next chapter, a project for do-it-yourselfers, he gets into kind of some of the details with building. So he mentions a few times that it's a very simple thing, that the essentials of sauna are that it's a wooden structure, and that you heat rocks, that you have cold and hot air and cold and hot water. So he is right. It is very simple that way. And he also mentions, you can see right here, that it says form follows function. And that is also very true for sauna. I think it's very important that we start with a clear idea of what you do in the sauna. Because say you're building a tennis court or a pickleball court, you're going to build them different depending on which one you're playing. And they might have some similarities, but there are also going to be differences. Let me see what other details he has here. He mentions that bathrooms in the time of Louis XV, they had 2 baths, one for washing and one for rinsing. That way, after you got in your bathtub, you're not just sitting around there in your dirty water. He says that, it's like when we wash our dishes, we wash off all the junk, all the leftover food on the plates, and then we rinse it with clean water. So in a sense, our plates are cleaner than us. Then he gets into the importance of wood walls and what type of wood to use. And in the late 70s, redwood was actually the very popular wood. But even then, he was foreseeing that there could be some cost with some issues with sustainability and cost, and he was right about that. There's not very many redwood saunas being built these days. He mentions other types that could be used, which are Western red cedar, which might be the most common wood these days in the United States. Engelmann spruce, sugar pine, cypress, aspen, and poplar. And he recommends laying out the boards. I thought this was interesting, horizontally rather than vertically. He says it gives more of a relaxing setting. So I'm not sure what it is about a vertical layout that would be less relaxing, but for some psychological reason, horizontal maybe is more relaxing. All right. Then he mentions that the technology and the tradition is always moving and advancing and changing, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and that you might even have smoke sauna users who kind of lament that smoke saunas are no longer popular and that they miss those days of the smoke sauna. He has a quote here. He compares them to the people that lament the passing of stone ground flour and handmade furniture. He mentions that the heating unit should be encased in masonry or a metal housing, and that this is very important. And that is to shield from some of that intense heat that comes off of the stove. you've ever been in a small sauna or sitting right next to the heater, it can feel like you're getting just intensely cooked. And then he also said that the sauna height should be between 75 and 84 inches. So we're looking at 6 and 7 feet. And in my opinion, I would say that that's a little low. You can definitely make a sauna work that way at those heights, but I think it is a little low. And then he gets into quite a bit of the accessorizing in the changing room, which I thought was good. Many sauna books don't have quite that much detail about that. And he mentions as part of the process of it that you could have some harsh scrubbing brushes or mitts or aids. And that it's good for kind of like scrubbing your skin down afterwards. And I've heard several people mention that they really like that as part of their post sauna routine, is to scrub down with those kind of harsh brushes. So as you can see, this chapter is one of the longest, and then the furnishings section is pretty in depth. And then the final chapter, A Variety of Designs, he shows some of the basic floor plans and prefab considerations and the costs. So let me show you some of those. So you can see some smaller designs where you have the heater just off to the left in a 4x6. And then there's a 6x8. You can see that the lower bench or the step bench gets a little bit deeper. And I haven't really measured what his top bench depth is, but I tend to like a fairly deep top bench. Maybe even like 32, 36 inches. I like it pretty deep. 8x8, 6x10. All right, and then a couple more there. Oh, it looks like Pablo has joined us, so let me head him to the stage. Hey, Pablo.
How are you guys?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I've just been going through the construction chapters. So I was just looking at the floor plan. Now that you joined us, what did you think about his construction chapters?
Yeah, he kept it just very brief, but I think what he did provide was a really good starting point for people to not overwhelm them with too much information, but provide them enough to be successful to like a satisfactory degree. That's not enough to build a Rolls-Royce sauna, but it's enough to build you a pretty darn good sauna and some good layouts.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of really depends on like how much hand holding you need for the build.
Totally.
Because you could just say, like he does say kind of at the beginning, it's just like, it's simple. It's a wooden room and you heat up the rocks and then you need hot air, cold air, hot water, cold water. Like that could be simple enough, but maybe simple enough if you're a Finnish person who grew up with it and knows how to build stuff. What was it like for you building your first sauna?
Gosh, I think what was interesting for the first one, you can read all the stuff you want, but you're not really gonna have like you almost really need experience to build a great sauna. And I think like everybody that builds one, I think everybody will have a thing that's like, oh, I wish I had done this. Maybe like you're saying, hey, the 36 wide inch like a 36-inch bench is just so much more comfortable for laying down and like, but you know, you only really read about them being maybe like 18, 20 inches wide. But for my first build, you know, I followed kind of the framework and followed a little bit of the concepts, and then um, the you know, the floor plan I followed. Those are easy to follow. But I think when you start dealing with like wall details and insulation types and then roof geometries and all that, the rabbit hole gets really, really deep. And I think for the nerds, there's plenty of room to nerd out. And for the people that are busy and just want a little hot room, then whatever they build is going to get the job done.
Right. Right. And there's different ways that you can nerd out. One is just like conceptually, where you're just sitting at home at your desk thinking about these ideas and maybe what you've learned in science class. And that can inform you a little bit. But really the other way to geek out is to actually just try it in your build.
Exactly. Yeah, and like you're like, hey, you know, you get, it's interesting. Sorry, I got to plug my camera phone in here.
Oh, that's
It's
fine.
interesting too because like, you know, when you build these saunas, a lot of people think you're building a building, and you're actually building a machine. It's just a thermodynamic machine. And then you throw lowly into the whole thing, and whoa, like, you know, angling your roof, like you and I have discussed in the past, changes the effects of how lowly hits you, and you know, managing moisture and all that stuff. But I like how he, you know, introduces people to, hey, you know, it's a little bit more than just like building a square, and it's enough to kind of get your brain thinking a little bit about it, and hopefully just prevent something that doesn't work. Because unfortunately, I have a friend that didn't. He just kind of built it on his own with no reading, and then we went to, you know, sauna, and he's like, "What the heck? This thing doesn't work." And then so he like started asking me questions because he knew I was kind of a sauna nerd, and I was like, "Oh shoot!" Like, you know, ceiling heights have a lot to do with how the space fills up with heat, and if the distance from the, you know, I can nerd out on all that, but no, I appreciate the book here. And how about with your first build? What were some of the challenges, or some of the items that maybe you took away from like a book like this?
Well, let's see. I had read his book when we did our first build. I probably didn't. You know, it's kind of weird. I don't think I consulted any of my sauna construction books when we drew ours up. You know, obviously I had the information floating around in my head from having read a few of these books, but mainly ours was like pretty experimental. It wasn't like a normal build anyways. So a lot of books wouldn't have been super helpful, but because our ceiling in our hot room is 10 foot high. So that's already way over what Bernhard said of 7 foot for the top height. But ours was kind of informed by our experience of using different saunas. And there are definitely things that I would do differently if I were to build a sauna again. I wouldn't follow that exact same method. You know, and I found several issues, whether it's like, wasps like to get in here, squirrels like to store their nuts up in here, maybe there's a mouse getting in this spot. You know, it's all those little tiny things that you learn that aren't even necessarily related to the heat of the sauna room.
Yep. And you know, it's kind of interesting too, is like the sauna has changed so much. Like on the cover of the book, for, you know, he's got a little old style sauna, and when you think about how those were heated, it was with wood, And so, when you look at how many BTUs or kilowatt, a good, say for example, my NEPA heater, that's a 25 kilowatt equivalent. You can't pull 25 kilowatt. Your service panel in your house will start glowing and you'll blow up the transformer down the street. And so, like, they were able to be very inefficient with their construction because they just had a monster of an engine in there. It's kind of like, if you got an old muscle car and you got horsepower coming out of your ears, you really don't need efficiency. You just power through it. But I think in this book, he does introduce like the layouts that are for some, it looks like for some electric heaters, which, you can kind of tell because they've got really reduced setbacks from flammables. And then, like, I think what's interesting with some of these sauna layouts too is like, it's kind of like people who, I think a good example is like people who drink coffee. Some people are just like, dude, I just want a cup of coffee, get a can of Folgers coffee, throw it in a coffee maker, and I'm happy. And then other people are like, oh, no, I need single origin beans from Kenya that the Americano's got to be brewed at this temperature. And then, with these types of saunas, like you can really get into that very niche sauna experience. Or you could just be like, hey, I just want Folgers coffee in the morning. If it's hot and has caffeine, I'm happy.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Like if I saw Folgers coffee can, I probably would not be super excited about the coffee. But some sauna builds that I see that don't look very good, I'm actually like super excited about those if I had a chance to use one.
Yeah.
Those are some of the best.
That's because they're just like like some of those older ones too. I think what's interesting is like it's almost like, and I like to use analogies a lot or just comparison. It's like people who buy like old sports cars. You're like, okay, if you want to go really fast and corner really hard, probably a new Porsche for $250,000 is the ticket. But there's nothing like sitting in a 1950s Porsche. And it's slow as hell. But it's got the feel. And like you're saying, there's some saunas that there's nothing perfect about them, but they got that smell and they got that, the benches creak a certain way, and there's just something about them that is like magic.
Yeah. If you see like an old sauna that has like some used curtains over the window, that's anytime I see that, it's like I know that's probably a good sauna. As long as it gets hot enough, which it probably does, then you're good.
Yeah.
There's, people read stuff online and they get very, there's just kind of such a narrow conception of what's discussed online, or there's very like common things that people say. And some of them are overstated and some of them are just even wrong. And I believed several of these. Like there was one that I started questioning a couple years ago. I think I was using Marcus's sauna up in Toronto, and he has an electric one in his backyard that he's built. And it's got a pretty powerful stove, and it's a smaller kind of a hot room. And he, I can't remember if he said he did it on purpose. Maybe he did it on purpose, but he pointed the ceiling so that the benches were over here and the ceiling pointed up over on the stove side, which I've seen even recently. I saw an email this week from a sauna builder's website saying, don't do it that way. And I used to think this is because you're going to get all your best heat and steam trapped up here. But he had a powerful enough heater, and his room is small enough in that small electric room that you don't necessarily want just like that massive burst of steam that you're going to get. So it was kind of a nice thing that some of it kind of traveled up here, hung out up here, then came down to you rather than going straight right up to you.
Yeah.
So it kind of broke the conventions, but I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense in a small space why you might choose to do that. Give your steam a little place to hang out first before it comes to get you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. One interesting thing on page 66, we got all these old sauna books, which is super cool. You and I got, combined, I think, well over 250 sauna books. And I've never seen prices. And this is the first time of any of those books where he talks about currently an indoor sauna costs anywhere from $1,400 or more than $10,000, depending on the size, quality, and amenities. The cheapest is a 6 foot by 6 foot by 7 foot heat room, complete with a heater, and currently in 1988, available for about $2,400. And then he goes on to say you could build it cheaper. $2,400 in 1988. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. In the original 1979, 2,200 it says. But prices even in the past, 10, 11 years since I've been into sauna have really actually shot up quite a bit. Like I think you could get a barrel sauna for $3 to $5, and now I see like $7 to $12. And same with like heaters. Like a lot of the heaters that used to be maybe $1,500 are now $2,500, $3,000. So that's a large increase.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who lives north of the Twin Cities, he sent me a picture this week of, he likes to experiment with his sauna builds, so it's fun when he sends me stuff. But he did the old style barrel, horizontal barrel, just with the door on the front, and then he just encased it in rocks. I think he said it was like 1,000 pounds of rocks. But I asked him how much it cost to build, and he's like, including the rocks, I think $200 for that one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Probably not the world's most efficient, but
once those rocks around it get hot, it's going to stay hot till Tuesday.
That's right. Yep. Well, and he had brick walls. He had brick walls as well. And actually, I was thinking about that as I was preparing for this week's video. A lot of the sauna heaters have like a thin metal encasing around the heater to shield from some of that intense heat. But I was thinking, I wonder if it'd almost be better if you're able to just have the core. And I think some Russian heaters are sold this way, where you buy the core, but then you can put that in kind of more of a masonry thing, so you capture a lot of that radiant heat.
Yeah. I've seen those where you can buy like the door and the ashtray, and then you're supposed to go to your hardware store and just buy the bricks and mortar. That would be so cool to do one day.
That would be very cool. Yeah. Especially if you got the flow right, so you got at least some sort of efficiency with your burn, and were able to heat up the rocks properly.
Yeah.
Anything else that jumped out to you from these chapters?
Not since I came in late. No, I think the building portion of it for the designs, he did a decent job for the limited number of pages spent on it.
Yeah. It's not super in depth. And actually, I wanted to give a few book recommendations. But you could start if you have any sauna. Do you ever have any friends that ask you for book recommendations for building a sauna?
Oh, yeah. When people ask on recommendations for building, honestly, I think one of the better ones is the Finnish sauna, the international Um, unfortunately, it's gotten really expensive, but I think this one is really well done. The International Handbook.
Yeah.
Anything by Alan Konya is like really good, but I think nowadays, I think if somebody wanted like a book that you just buy on Amazon, I think I would probably just recommend um, Lassie's new book. He does a great job on these. Yeah, The Secrets.
Yep.
How about you? What's your go-to recommendation?
Well, I pulled a few out, and I pulled those two. And it's interesting because I think Lassie, he references Alan's book. So I think Alan's book was pretty, Alan was an architect. And he really did his homework, and he understood the practice and the culture fairly well for not being a Finn. So the details are really good, enough that Lassie referenced it. But then also several books reference the Finnish Building Society, and they have a couple versions out. Let's see, what's their name? I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's the Finnish name there. So I think they have 3 different versions of that out. And that is for building. Those are the ones I would recommend. And then, but I was going to tell people that rather than start with a building book, I think you start with like this book that goes into the culture first. And then this book right here, Sweating with Fins, is like a book about stories about sauna. And then the opposite of Cold, which kind of gets into the culture and has a lot of pictures of different like older types of sauna. And I think it's important to start there because like Bernhard says, form follows function. So those tell you like the function.
Those are great recommendations.
So they're not actually building books, but if you don't know what you want to do with the thing, how do you know how to build it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that small book, that's a little bit of a unicorn book, if you can find that one.
This one.
Yeah, such a great book.
Yeah, and I recommend people look at your libraries, get something interlibrary loan. Some of these are hard to find, but if you can get it from your library for free, check it out, read it, return it. That's a good route to go.
Awesome. What book are we doing next?
Oh, that is a good question. Did you recommend a book last week?
Shoot, I know we talked about a couple of good options, but I think there's just so many. It's like, and you know so many of the sauna books. What about did you want to go with like another book that's kind of like hits on all the topics, like how to bathe, how to build, or did you want to go like laser focus on like a specific book that touches on the single topic?
Well, yeah, it could really be either. There's lots of options.
Are there any like topics that are getting discussed on your Facebook group or anything like that maybe like we could do like a book review on it and maybe point towards like the video of like, hey, we actually just discussed this in this book review?
Well, I mean, this one is really good for the stories. It's just a fun cultural book. And it's a little bit hard to track down, but it was published by a university in Canada. I think you had pointed me, if we're talking about the technical side of things, you had pointed me to this book about sauna heaters, Kiowas.
Oh, I've read that one a couple of times. I love that one. but it's pretty nerdy.
Yeah. Well, nerdy's fun. Now is this, let's see, is this one in English or Finnish?
I think that one might need Google Lens.
Yep. Yep. I think it's all Finnish. I'm just looking. What are you finding? Oh yeah, there's the QoS one. There's one right here. This is more of kind of like the Finnish version of the opposite of cold. It's the World of Sauna by Kai Bremer.
That would be a fun one. That's a great book. Let's do that one.
And it has amazing photographs, a lot of cultural stuff, like sauna on boats. That one is one of the most well done kind of general sauna books.
I would love to go back over that one again. And that one's 1986.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, there's so many just interesting little sauna books where you can just pull out nuggets. There was one I was looking at the other day that's called The Finnish Sauna in Manitoba. And I think this comes off of someone's like I don't know if it's like their thesis project for college, but it's very like narrow focused, it's Manitoba. And it just has, I don't know how much of it I can show. I should have
That's cool.
taken a picture, but it's got a lot of cool details in there and a lot of text. And to be honest, I haven't read it, so it's got probably tons of interesting information. Check this out.
Oh, that is super cool. I'm gonna look that up. Finnish sauna
in Manitoba. What year is this one? This one is put out by the National Museum of Canada, and it says 1977. So those are always my favorite when they have those cultural connections. There are some books that get put out that, because sometimes I'll ask publishers to just send me a copy, and they will. So I'll get one of the new books that comes out, and they'll usually have nice pictures and everything, but the information in the book is just kind of shallow. It doesn't really give you anything new. It's nice that the person got paid to make the book or put the photos in, but it doesn't really add anything new to the sauna book world. So it's always exciting when someone comes up with something that has depth.
Yeah, I've had those before where the marketing on it is really nice, but then you crack it open and you're like, oh, okay. I was looking for a little more in there, but
yeah. And there's we're talking about building guides. There's a popular guide called Trumpkin's Notes online. I have an interview with Walker, who did them, and he has a lot of details, so it's worth checking his out. And then also the Sauna Times website, they have a lot of building information, and I think he has a print book now. I think Glenn's going to send me a copy one of these days, but worth checking that out as well. So there's lots of places online that you can find build information.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, anything else?
No, looking forward to the next one. Just let me know what you pick, and yeah, I'm excited to meet up again soon.
Yeah, I should talk to Arrow and Sam and see if I could do one on the Upper Bench channel. And Pablo, I should have you choose the book.
Oh, that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be game. I'd be game. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone who watches this in the future. Thanks for following along and watching the videos and reading Bernhard's book. And we'll just watch our channels. If we do another book club, even if it's on the Upper Bench channel, we'll put some links for that. And have a good evening, a good holiday, and get some good sauna in.
Happy Thanksgiving. Have a good sauna.